Welcome to Beyond Fringe, an organic podcast discussing the topics beyond the fringe of this or any other reality. On this podcast, we explore cryptids, paranormal activity, lost legends, aliens, government conspiracies, historic mysteries, lost treasures, and forbidden archaeology. I'm the Cryptid Guy, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Daniel Hurst, a.k.a. Tiny. Together, we explore the world beyond the fringe.
How's it going, man?
It's good. How about you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's good to be back doing this again.
Back in the old place, doing the same old thing, huh?
Yeah, we had to take a little hiatus. A whole lot of stuff going on, but
very busy. It's been a very busy year, both for both of us.
Yeah, it's. I'll be glad to see what 2020 brings. 2020.
Speaking of 2020, Tiny, I was looking through some of my reports for this year, and I've probably got almost a 25 to 30% uptick in Dogman activity alone in North Carolina this year, just alone. And also along with that, you know, we both do paranormal, not as much, you do more than I do. But what does it look like on the paranormal end of that? Have you noticed an increase in the paranormal activity this year?
There's been an increase, I think, periodically every year. And this year's been no exception. And it's just a little bit of everything. And you know, I use the word paranormal as an umbrella term. Mm-hmm. And that goes for, when I say paranormal, it means, you know, spirits, ghosts, it means UFOs, it means cryptid stuff.
Everything.
And it's increased every year. And there's something happening.
I agree. And, you know, the funny thing, when you say paranormal, and I'm a firm believer, that's why I believe paranormal is everything. It's like the old X-Files term.
Yeah.
It's everything.
Yeah. And
I've personally noticed I have 4 Dogman reports from churches, Tiny. Churches. On church grounds and in church. I've never had that before.
You know, an interesting thing that you bring the churches up, I just read a book. And I know that's hard to believe.
I believe it. I know.
Book.
Well, someone read it to you. It's
right,
same thing.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of true. It was an audio book.
Folks, we don't hold back here on Beyond Fringe. We just don't do it.
Since you say that, this is an organic podcast, y'all. So we're not going to edit a whole lot, and we're going to try and do everything in one take.
And it might be PG-13.
Yeah. We like to joke, so.
Yes.
But anyway, back to this book I read. It was all about, oh my God, Christian, what's it called? I told you about this book.
You did tell me about it, and it was, for life of me, I can't think of it.
It's the Area 51 of Paranormal Activity.
Skinwalker
Ranch. And it was called Hunt for the Skinwalker. And I highly recommend this book. But in this book, the author was talking a lot about how Dogman and a lot of cryptid activity has happened around cemeteries and things like that, almost like it's a protective thing.
See, I've had cemetery reports, and I've heard other people on different podcasts talking about how Dogman protects cemeteries or Native American burial grounds, things like that. But I personally have never had reports coming out of areas that basically said this Dogman came out on church grounds, was seen around the church numerous times, and coincidentally hangs out in churches.
Yeah.
And that's the first time. And that, again, depending on what your view of Dogman is, like whether you believe it's a supernatural being or it's a cryptid, that's a natural cryptid, a natural creature, that can be terrifying, because what if it's a herald for demonic activity? I don't know if it is. I'm just saying, what if? Yeah. Again, I've personally seen a Dogman. I believe they're 100% natural phenomenon. I think they're just the cynocephaly. And again, we'll go into my beliefs about that. But I'm also of the mind that I could be wrong, and it could be for something else. It could be a supernatural being. That could be a herald.
Well, and that's the thing, too, about what we do, is we're investigating. You know, we're investigating what all of this activity, we don't know what it is. Nobody has the answer. That's why we're out here investigating. That's why all these people out here are so curious. And until we have definite answers,
proof,
you know, until we do, as much as I hate to say this because this isn't my belief, But until we do have that body on the table, we're not going to know. And it could be 100 different things. I mean,
and you're right, Tiny, because the truth of the matter is like Tiny and I are both on the no kill of anything. Like, we do investigate, and when we're in the deep woods, we are armed, but that's for protection only. But we're both in the no kill zone. But unfortunately, along with that, you have to be ambivalent enough to realize that there's a lot of people that aren't going to believe it until they see, quote unquote, the body on the slab. Now, I don't like thinking that way. But unfortunately, I agree with you when it comes to that, and it's the same thing with our fuzzy buddy Bigfoot. A lot of people believe. Right now, I'm showing Tiny a map of sightings that have happened in the U.S. In the last couple of years.
3,313 reports over 92 years in the U.S. and Canada.
Right. Now, that's got to mean something to somebody, because not all those people are crazy.
Well, and that brings me to another point that a lot of people say, and this can go for a lot of different things, Sasquatch and Dogman, things like that, as they say, well, it's mass hallucination or it's coincidence, things like that. But you have solid sightings that go back how many hundreds of years?
Thousands of years.
There's
the Egyptians. Yeah, the Egyptians saw UFOs. Now, they're in biblical text. You can't deny they're not there. And again, the Cryptid Guy is a firm believer that there is life on other planets, just for the record. And I believe I'm speaking for Tiny when I say Tiny has the same belief. So I'm not trying to speak for you, Tiny.
I personally believe that it's arrogant to think that we're the only life in the universe.
How arrogant? That would be the most arrogant thing you could ever say, is we're it.
Yeah. But now, on that same topic, I don't know if they're visiting us or not. I do believe in UFOs. But UFO as in unidentified flying object. Is it ours? Is it theirs?
We don't know.
Who knows?
It could be the Aurora Project,
Yeah.
A lot of people forget that the Aurora Project, there was a NOAA satellite that tracked some kind of craft leaving the Nevada area at an incredible speed, climbing up to a significant height, and then within 15 minutes it was flying over London, was it?
Yeah.
So, again, it took off out of Nevada. Could have been Area 51. We don't know. It's just, and that's not a new report. That's an old one, isn't it? That's at least 10 years old. So, again, a UFO could be one of ours or it could be extraterrestrial. We don't know, but I'm a firm believer that there's extraterrestrial influence in a vehicle like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's completely possible. The old theory that, the crash happened and we stole the technology. Yeah. I mean, it's completely...
Well, in Philip Corso's book, The Day After Roswell, this, in my opinion, that man had no reason to lie. He was on his deathbed. He released the book. He did the interviews. I've spoken to people that actually talked to him, and they said there's no doubt in their mind that he was telling the truth.
Well, there's people that say all these people that report these sightings and whether it be paranormal, cryptid, or UFO, they just want that 5 minutes of fame.
Exactly.
But let me ask you this. What kind of fame does that give you? Is that a positive?
No, it's negative.
Of fame?
And again, here's the other thing. Do you really want the MIBs knocking on your door? Because, my friends, I assure you they're real. Do not ever think that the government doesn't know exactly what you're doing, what's going on, and they know what they're hiding. So they're not going to let things just happen. Everything's done by design. There is a plan. What it is, I don't know. I'm just sure there is a plan.
Only if they're knocking on my door, I hope they're offering me a job. That's it.
Oh, yeah. Hey, listen, we can be bought. Anyone listening that works for government, Tiny and I, we're cheap, too. Just, a good retirement, some dental, health insurance. I would like a couple of custom, cool gadgets, but we can talk about that later. Yeah. Maybe we jack up the Subaru a little bit, put some, I don't know, nice laser beam, something.
Sweet utility belt.
Utility belt. You can't go wrong with that. Again, we're open. We can be bought. How pathetic is it? This is a background. This is a podcast about, looking at things beyond fringe. And we're not talking about being bought. It's just, you know what? That shows our honesty.
Yeah, true enough.
Because anyone to sit here and say, "Oh, you can't buy me," but you're lying. That is a lie. Yes. That is a lie, my friend. Well, anyone can be bought. It's just a negotiation.
Well, I would much rather work for somebody with that kind of power than
Oh yeah, I want to be on their side. That's all I'm saying.
And to be fair, the reason that I do what I do is for me. I want to know for me, and I do this podcast because it's interesting. We have fun, and if we can, me personally, I'd like to be able to help some people out.
That's what our goal is. This whole everything we do, our investigations, and again, a lot of people who are just new to this podcast, they might not realize that we've been around for a while.
Yeah.
This is my 24th year in paranormal cryptid investigations. You've been doing this pretty much since the day you could walk.
Yeah.
So it's
my first paranormal experience. I was 5 years old.
Yeah, and I don't know if you want to give your age away, but I assure you that wasn't the past couple of decades. So.
Oh, I don't care. I've earned every gray hair I have.
Yes, sir, you have. We both have. And I'll tell you something. The older you get, I know this is a cliche, but the older you get, the more you realize there's more things out there that we don't understand. Yeah. And I think, when you're young, you're arrogant. I know I was. I was arrogant. I'm still arrogant. But I've learned
I won't say anything.
Well, I appreciate that, but I'm honest about it. I've learned to appreciate the fact that there's so much out there that we don't understand yet. That's why I do what I do, and I want to help people.
Yeah.
And we've said it before on past interviews and in past podcasts. Our main goal is to help people, because if they've seen something they can't explain, that is a mind shock. That will throw you for a loop.
In a lot of instances, it can almost cause PTSD type.
It is. I have a guy that calls me every once in a while, and he's not too far from the Asheville area, and he was out deer hunting. I'm not going to give locales, but if you were to draw a 15-mile circle around Asheville, it was in that area. And I've told you this story. He calls me every couple of weeks because he still doesn't know how to deal with it. Apparently, he was hunting. He looked up and he said this thing was 11 foot staring at him. He said it just looked at him for a couple of minutes. He raised up his arms. He said he had listened to one of my old podcasts, and he said that he had remembered that if I ever ran in a situation, I just put my hands up and start walking backwards, put my head down, so I wasn't appear as aggressive. And he said that's what he did.
Well, and that shows intelligence.
Well, it does, and it also says, hey, I understand you're the boss. Please don't rip my head off.
Yeah.
But he did that, and he went back to his truck, and then 3 hours later, he came back with his friend, and they took some pictures of footprints, and they had hair. I'm not sure where the hair came from. It was gray, but it's very, very convincing, and it has basically messed with him because his wife is a little concerned about his mental behavior now, and when it comes to this, and he's become pretty much what I would say. He's become pretty much obsessed with this whole thing, and that's how it happens. That's what happened to me. I had my first sighting. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and then all of a sudden, I just want to know more and more and more. And I'd be willing to bet anyone who is legitimate, let me say that, in the cryptid field, because unfortunately there are a lot of hoaxers out there.
Yeah. Anyone
legitimate probably has the same background story. They saw something, they can't explain it, it scared them. Anyone to sit there and tell you, I sit there and I stared it down, blah, blah, that is never, anyone that starts off a story with that, I'm walking away because I don't believe it. But afterwards, when you've had time to think and your mind gets a little more clear, you want to find out answers. And I think that's what happened to me. I think that's what happened to you. And I think that's what happens to all the pretty much legitimate crypto zoologists.
Yeah. Well, I think, that's human nature too. Mm-hmm. You have an experience that you can't explain. You want to understand it. And a lot of times that's a difficult thing. Oh,
yeah, because you're taught from day one. Darwinism. Mm-hmm. Okay? It's all about Darwin. Darwin said this. Evolution of the species. This is it. Everything's been recorded. There's no MacGuffins out there. But we're still finding new life in the oceans. We're still finding. I believe we find 3,000 to 5,000 new species a year of animals and plants that we didn't know.
I just read about one that was extinct and has come back to life. I don't remember what species it was. I'd have to go back and look it up. But it's been considered extinct for years, and all of a sudden, here it is again.
I remember hearing stories when I was younger about scientists going to the Congo and finding brontosauruses and things like that. I don't find that out of the realm of possibility. You never know.
Yeah,
you never know. They still haven't in the jungles of Bali or Borneo. They still haven't discovered everything in there, or they haven't even been able to penetrate it so bad.
Well, when you think about life, in general, especially when you're talking about cryptid species, life is amazing. Life finds a way.
I was just about to say that. And you know what? I agree 100% with that. And I think that chaos guy from Jurassic Park used to say that. And I agree with that.
Yeah.
Life finds a way. And eventually, you can't beat Mother Nature.
No.
I know we've got all this advanced science, and they're probably There's probably clones running around out there. There could be alien influences that help with these clones. However, I still believe deep down, Mother Nature is still going to trump all. Because that's just the way it is. I mean, you start tampering with nature too much, it's going to tamper back.
Oh yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons why I like that first Jurassic Park movie the best, is because it was like it was a quid pro quo. If you do this, then, or if then, if this happens, then this will happen. And all those movies are basically, I love them all. I think they're great, but they all teach a lesson, and the lesson is Mother Nature eventually is going to win.
Yeah. Well, talking about Jurassic Park and things like that, again, in that book, he mentioned just a little bit about tiny Tyrannosaurus Rex sightings around Texas. It's like 3 or 4 feet tall. People were seeing them. And they look like a Tyrannosaurus, is what people were describing them. And this whole book was, everything was, all the sightings and everything was around in the 90s. And
that's when Bigelow bought it.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't that when we really started talking about genetic engineering and the sheep?
Yeah, Dolly the sheep. Well, that was in the early 90s, wasn't it?
Yeah. So, they're going to, the government, the military, whoever, them,
the MIBs, as we call them all.
They're going to take something like that and they're going to say, Tyrannosaurus, okay, we have this technology. Let's make these things and see if we can weaponize them.
I agree. I agree 100%. I bleed red, white, and blue, and I know you do too. But sometimes our government, I think they just think about defensive instead of offensive sometimes. And, I think that's where this whole mindset. Now, I'll be the first one to admit, you have to, let's be honest, in this planet we're living on, whoever's got the biggest baseball bats kind of run the show.
Yeah.
And that's why America is so great. And if you take that ability away, then things start to change. And I think once people accept, adopt, and apply that, they'll kind of loosen up on the contempt, if you will, for what's going on. All right? Because it's been happening since day one. I mean, you don't think that there was a black budget for special arms and training when Obama was in office? I mean, that's ridiculous.
It goes as far back. I mean, we know like what the Nazis were into. They spent huge amounts of effort in everything occult.
Yeah, the Thule Society, the Eurobond, all of that. Yeah,
and even our government talking about trying to, the remote viewing projects.
You and I both met Dr. John Alexander.
Yeah,
and that man is unbelievable. The amount of knowledge in his head is ridiculous. I mean, the movie with the Men Who Stare at Goats, that's loosely based on his life.
Yeah.
So, I mean, don't for 1 minute think that we're not all into the paranormal in some aspect or another. Everyone is.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. And again, I'm not trying to pigeonhole anyone, but the truth of the matter is, like, superstitious people, that's paranormal if you think about it. Rabbit's foot, that's all of that stuff.
And that's the thing.
Exactly.
Paranormal is a huge umbrella term. It's
exactly.
Anything not normal.
It's exactly. That's the way I look at it. So when we usually say that, and that's the other thing we say a lot. When we're talking about the government, sometimes we'll refer to them as the MIBs, as everyone else knows them, the Men in Black. That's kind of like an umbrella term for us. When we're talking about that, that's like any agency that knows what's going on or has the ability to make someone disappear or mess with them. The them. The MIBs are what we call the them. So whether they're going to call them MIBs or the them. And again, if the MIBs or the them are listening, we are available. So let's just throw that out there.
I look good in the suit.
You do. And he's a big guy. He's intimidating. And I got a heck of a mouth on me. So I'll be more. I can scare someone. Especially if Tiny's standing behind me, I'll just yell at him. They won't know what happened. Again, all we need, minimal salaries, pensions.
All right, so since we're calling this show Beyond Fringe, let me switch lanes just a little bit.
Yes, sir.
So what's your thoughts on the multiverse theory?
You know what? I don't know. Tiny, part of me wants to accept it. The rational part of my brain says, is it possible? Of course, because the first thing you learn when doing any kind of paranormal or cryptid research is that anything is possible. Forget what you know, and you have to have an open mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to do that. But the multiverse kind of thing, I guess, you know what? I grew up in the 90s, and the comic books were always around. I'm a big comic book nerd. And that's where I'm having my problem, because I'm always thinking the multiverse, and I'm thinking something like, the Marvel multiverse or DC universe, all that. So is it possible? Yes. Do I think it's something we legitimately have to deal with right now? No. I think if that is true, like if there's an Earth where I'm Superman and I'm also a billionaire,
right?
Okay, I want to go there. That's where I'm headed.
Super Batman?
Super Batman. That works for me.
But see, then you'd have to kill yourself to take yourself over.
Well, I wouldn't be able to do it because I'm Super Batman there.
True enough.
And I'm just normal here. So, I don't know. Again, it's just one of those things you never know. I would like to think that, is it possible? Yes. Is it probable? Probably not.
Well, I think there's a very distinct possibility that it's real. And, scientifically speaking, we're very close to proving it. Now a lot of is this paranormal stuff. Is it crossovers? I don't know.
See, I've got a lot. It's like a lot of, again, when it comes to cryptids, I'm a firm believer that they are of this earth.
Right.
I don't buy the fact that there are aliens involved with Bigfoot or Dogman or the Alligator Man or or the Mothman. I think these cryptids are indigenous.
Women. Have you heard about those?
Yeah, I've heard about that.
That's crazy. It
is crazy. But I think they're indigenous to the planet because that actually goes back in mythos.
Yeah.
In Greek mythology, all these creatures were around. So I think what happens is, in every mythology, if you will, there's probably a little bit of truth in there that's just been watered down over the generations and the centuries
right.
But I think it came from somewhere. I'm a firm believer that the cynocephaly is the modern day Dogman. To me, it makes sense.
So
it's logic.
Explain that.
The cynocephaly, best example, if you look at the Egyptian folklore, Anubis would be considered a cynocephaly. Dog's head, human body.
Which a lot of people have described their sightings to look like Anubis.
And a lot of people say it was either Anubis or it's a much bigger version. I call Anubis the Charlie type alpha, or I'm sorry, the Charlie type Dogman. I classify, this is my own classification. I have the alpha, beta, and the Charlie. The Charlie's the narrower, more looks like a big wolf on his back legs running around. He's got the hocks and everything, but he's not as broad. There's the beta type that's more like the soldier type. That's it's about 7-8 foot tall. It's big. It's still got the same kind of hocks. And then there's what I call the alpha type that can go up to about 12 feet, and it's just a huge, looks like a professional wrestler with hair. That's all jacked up. I mean, they're just massive, and that's what I saw. So I'm a firm believer that there's 3 types just from reports. However, I'm a firm believer that they're all from the same species. They're just specific subspecies. And I think that they all branch from the cynocephaly. And I think they're regional. I think it's pretty much like bears. You look at bears. Black bear down here in North Carolina isn't going to be as big as, a Kodiak in Alaska.
Right.
But they're in the same species. So I think they're all off the same evolutionary tree. They just made subspecies. And I also think they've been around forever, and I think that they were susceptible to the same diseases, an example would be smallpox, that human beings were. And I think just now, after a couple hundred years of adapting to it and their immune system's kicking in, we're seeing more and more of these creatures because their population is getting bigger. And I can back that with another theory of mine, simply because with all of the deforestation that everyone's always talking about, this continent is still 84% intact the day that the Europeans first landed here. So that means all of our infrastructure, all of our roads, houses, everything, they're on 16% of our country. So that's a lot of space, all right? So when people say, we would have run into them or something like that, look at a national forest. Do you think you can find everything in there? Even today, it's late December. I was out with my wife. We were hiking today, and the woods. The evergreens are still what? They're green. You still can't see in the woods. There's big chunks of stuff you can see, but you can't see everything. So for people to say they couldn't hide, that's ridiculous.
Well, and you think about something, like a bear or a deer or you go up north or a moose, something like that. And if they don't want you to see them, you're not going to see them. And
the other thing the point I was getting to before I sidetracked myself, which is something I do quite often, is with all the deforestation, as I was saying earlier, for the lumber and all that and the woodland materials, when they go back and plant, all right, those trees aren't going to be big enough to resume, that 40 feet for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
So what happens? They get grass and they become fields, right?
Right.
Well, what eats grass in fields?
Deer.
There's never been more deer in this country than there are right now. So if these are carnivores or opportunistic omnivores, they've got a food source that's just plentiful. All right. As many deer as there are in this part of the country. I'm willing to bet you there's more deer in this part of the country than there are cattle. And I'm willing to bet that's probably true. So if someone wants to talk about food sources, and if these creatures are that size, that massive, they're going to have to be carnivoristic. That's just my opinion. Just to maintain that size, you're going to need that meat and protein to maintain that size and agility.
Well, then there's going to be people that say, well, what about, again, like a moose? How big a moose is? They're not carnivores.
No, they're not. But they're not designed to be carnivores either. They don't have fangs. They don't have claws. You know?
But they still sustain that size.
Exactly. And again, and we go back to Mother Nature, because it's all about what Mother Nature gives these entities or creatures or animals, you know? Yeah. And that's where the arrogance kicks in my opinion. Because who are we to say that can't be true?
Yeah.
And that's, again, it goes to arrogance. I was talking to a colleague of mine, and he's a Bigfoot guy. Actually, I don't have permission to use his name, but he's been doing a lot of cryptid research for a long time. Mm-hmm. And we were having the same discussion, and we have never talked about this before, but we had the exact same points, and they were just basically what we just said. Yeah. You know, the food source, the deer, carnivoristic ability, you never know.
Well, now, you know, we talk about the increase in sightings and stuff like that, especially in, you know, closer to towns, closer to people, things like that. Now, we know that, like, bear, there's more sightings of bear because, you know, they're coming in to eat easy food.
Garbage cans.
You think that's the same?
Oh, definitely. And the other thing is, I honestly think these creatures are intelligent enough, they probably get bored, and we're entertainment for them.
Yeah.
I mean, if let's face it, if you're a highly evolved, you know, North American primate that's bipedal, and you've got a family unit, let's just say you got two little ones, they get bored.
Let's go watch these naked
monkeys. They can't watch The Simpsons like you and me.
Yeah.
They go watch us, you know, and that's what they do. I think we're entertainment for them. And there have been hundreds of reports, dare I say, hundreds, where they have said, the witnesses have stated they were looking at us and they were just staring at us, or something was looking in the window, and it had been there forever, or you know, or they heard scratches on the window.
There again, my first cryptid experience. I'll go ahead and tell that story. Right, is exactly that. I was maybe 6 or 7 years old, and I was, well, let me backtrack. Where I grew up in eastern Tennessee, and I lived in the woods. My nearest neighbor was half a mile away, if you don't count the cows around us. Plenty of deer. You know, we had a herd of probably 15 or 20 come through the yard every other day. And at the time, we lived in a mobile home. It's just your typical 12 by 70. And you know, most people are familiar with how they're set up. So we had our sofa up against the window facing the woods. And I was asleep right under the window. My parents on either side of me doing whatever they were doing. And my mom said she heard breathing in the window. And she listened to it for a few minutes. And, you know, you can tell when somebody's looking at you and breathing. You can tell the direction by the breath. And she said it was looking at her, whatever it was. And she told my dad. My dad's like, no, it's just the cicadas. Or, well, katydids. That's what I grew up knowing them by. And my mom said, no, there's something breathing in the window. He said, no. She said, just listen. So he listened. And my dad was a very practical man. It wasn't that he wasn't a believer. It was, if it didn't affect him, then it didn't matter. You know, if he couldn't...
I understand.
You know, if he couldn't touch it, feel it, see it, it just didn't matter. You know, that wasn't his thing. And so he listened, and he started hearing it too. And this is back before we had guns or anything like that. We didn't have any outside lighting. And they decided in turn to get up and go in the kitchen and get, you know, the biggest knife we had. So they got a knife and they were sitting down. I don't know what they thought they were going to do with it. But, you know, made them feel better, I guess. And the whole time I'm laying directly under this window asleep, mind you. And they sat and listened to it for a while. And my dad, now, I'm 6'6". I'm 300 pounds right now. My dad was 5'7", 130 pounds. All right. And my dad finally got fed up with it. He said, screw this. Jumped up, headed to the door. Right. So as soon as he jumped up and headed to the door, this thing started moving. And from the time he hit the front door and come around, I would say maybe 30 feet around the side of the trailer, my mom said she heard 5 very distinct footfalls. And it was gone. He got around to the back of the trailer, nothing. Nothing, just gone. And they measured the next day from the very bottom of the window to the ground. It was exactly 7 feet. So you're looking at least 7.5, 8 feet tall, whatever this thing was. And can move roughly 60 feet in 5 steps.
It might have been taller than that, too.
Yeah.
Because if it's got a stride like that, I mean, how far was the wood line from the back of the trailer?
I would estimate probably about 60 feet.
And 5?
Yeah.
5 steps?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this thing's covering roughly 15 foot to stride, and it's gone. My friend, you're looking at something 9 foot tall, which in that area of Tennessee is not unheard of. Because it's funny, I was just looking at a report I have from an area not far away from that area, and the report said that the guy swore it was next to a tree branch, and it actually had to duck its head on the tree branch, and it was right at about 11.6. So that's a monster. That thing's huge.
And we had a lot of uprooted trees and stuff around there, and everybody said, "Well, it's just bear, hunt for grubs." But it's possible, can't completely wholeheartedly deny.
No, but is it a fresh tree? Is it a rotten tree? I don't care how big. Tree. Yeah, the bears aren't big enough to do that in that area. If it's like a fresh oak and it's got a 12-inch radius or 9-inch, a bear's not going to be able to push that out of the ground. Yeah. Let's be honest.
A few months after that, we heard two coon hunters. They had a sighting not far from the house, and we had some sort of winged something land on the roof. I mean, there was all kinds of stuff down there.
Well, you saw a gargoyle out there, right?
Yeah.
Or what you thought was a gargoyle.
That's what I'm calling it. I don't know. Looking back, I'm kind of wondering if it wasn't a Bigfoot in the top of the tree. Because I didn't, back then I didn't study them as much. And I didn't realize they climbed.
They climb, and, there was a report. I just heard a report from another podcast. And I got a kick out of it because, as you know, I got my master's out of Western Carolina, and Colowee, and there was a report of a guy who was there maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and he went for a walk, not too far off campus, and he said he looked up in the tree and he saw a juvenile Bigfoot staring at him, and he said it was black with conical head and everything, and it's one of these things that, it's one of those reports that, I take it with a grain of salt because it wasn't, he said he stared at it and he wasn't scared. I just don't find that too plausible. But again, you never know who you're dealing with. But there are a lot of reports of Bigfoots in trees in that particular area. And if you've ever been to Colowee looks like it's by the Pisgah National Forest, isn't it? Is that the Pisgah National?
So.
Yeah. So there's just an immense amount of land out there. I mean, it's gorgeous. A great school. I was very happy to go there. But there's just a lot of reports in that area, but a lot of them are in trees.
Yeah, and back then I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, this is basically in the last 10 years, this is, in my opinion, and again, this is just my opinion, the real basic ability to communicate and talk about cryptozoology has just started basically happening in the last 10 years. That's just my opinion. Well, because prior to that, I'd be doing research on my own for years, and I would just collect stuff and read things and blah, blah, blah. I never discussed it with anyone because, one, everyone thinks you're nuts, and two, it's like it's hard to find people that are interested in the same thing as you.
Well, and that's the thing, too. That's part of why I do what I do, and with this podcast and my own podcast, things like that, is there's still a stigma to the paranormal. Mm-hmm. And even as popular as it's become with the TV shows and everything like that, there's still a stigma there. And a lot of people that have these experiences, they can't just go to anybody and say, look, this happened. I don't know how to deal with it. Because they're going to look at you and go, well, what are you taking?
Well, that's why we want to help people, because we've both been there. I mean, I have seen things I can't explain. I don't know if it was. I've seen things in the Tampa Bay area where I'm convinced it was a UFO just because of the way it moved. Could have been a plane, of course, but there's an Air Force, or I'm sorry, there's a base there. So it could be all kinds of things. But I'm convinced it was not of this world just by the way it moved. I have seen a Dogman, point blank, and I don't care what anyone says. I know what I saw. I know what that thing was. I have not seen a Sasquatch. I've seen remnants of a Sasquatch. I pretty much think I was there 30 seconds after Sasquatch made his move and kind of beelined out of an area. And that, if that does come out, that was taped. So we don't know how that's going to work out.
If you had your choice, which would you rather have an encounter with?
Oh, I got to go Alpha Bigfoot. I want to meet the big man. I'm just hoping he likes me.
Yeah, no kidding.
I'll give him a Twinkie or something. Here you go.
Right. Well, and they're notorious for liking sweets.
Exactly. For some reason, every story, even the ones that go back with the 1849ers, the gold rush, when all those things were happening and all those contacts and sightings were happening, they all said they would basically steal whatever had sugar in it, like the pancake flour, the flapjack mix, and just eat it. Yeah. So I think you're right, and they don't normally have sugar or sweets. So I mean that'd be something new to them.
Yeah. So, what got you into this?
Where I'm from, in New England, originally, northern Appalachia, I'm pretty sure we had a Bigfoot around our house. The first time I remember hearing a different name besides Bigfoot was from my grandfather, and he called it the Boss of the Woods. We were walking, one of my cousins and I and my grandfather were walking. He's long since passed, and it really kind of makes me mad because I would have loved to talk to him about this.
Yeah.
But he found a huge footprint. I mean, it was bare. I remember seeing it. It was massive. He probably had a size 10 shoe, and it was just almost twice as big. It was just massive. And I remember as a little kid trying to put my foot in there, and it was ridiculously big. And he basically grabbed me and my cousin, and we hauled. He pretty much carried us all the way back home real quick. And I remember him talking to my dad and my uncle, and him telling my dad that there was a boss to the woods out there, and he needed to keep an eye on the kids, and blah, blah, blah. And I'd never heard that term before. And then years and years later go by. There were some few things that happened with that. We had a big Irish setter at the time, Clifford, and this dog was massive. And we had what kind of dog was Lassie? Collie. We had a collie named George too. And these guys George used to go through windows. Every 6 months we'd have to replace the bay window because he'd go for the garbage man. But there was times when George would be sleeping downstairs and you'd hear a thump or something on the house, and I used to watch TV downstairs. I'd sneak downstairs to watch TV. I'd hear a thump or something like right behind me on the wall in the house, and George would hide under the kitchen table, like crying. So I don't know what was out there, but that happened for years, and we just didn't know. Like I said, I personally never saw anyone. I saw evidence, like our trash would be pushed over, knocked down, but that could have been anything. But my dad used to tie it up with bungee cords, and the bungee cords would be taken off and laid on the ground. So I can't disprove or prove anything. I just remember seeing all that stuff. But that's kind of how it all started. And then I used to camp in the White Mountains a lot when I was a kid. And after my grandfather died, I found out that he was a fighter pilot in World War II. And when he got out of the military, he took a year and went to Alaska. And I guess when he came back, he was a little more open-minded about a whole lot of different things. He's a very smart guy. Like I said, it's one of the tragedies in my family's. That him dying very early and very young. But I would have loved to spend some time with him, just talking about this stuff. Because I'm a firm believer. After talking to my grandmother a little bit, she would say he saw things in the woods out there that she wouldn't talk about.
Yeah.
Or he told her not to ever bring up. And he was just a cool guy. But that's basically how it all started. And then of course in Search of, you can't go wrong.
Yeah.
Leonard Nimoy, God, I miss him.
Yeah.
He was so awesome. And then it's just never going to be another Leonard Nimoy. Let's face it. There's only one Spock. I don't care who you're thinking. Yeah, Spock was Spock. That was it. And, just things like that. And I was always interested in UFOs. My parents, when they were still dating in high school, they were actually on a beach in New England. I'm not going to give the name of the beach because I don't want anyone correlating anything. But they actually all got detained by the Air Force because they all saw a UFO.
Wow. And
it was by an air base that actually had nuclear silo missile that no one knew about. It was hidden. So if you know anything about New England and you know there's only one base there, you kind of know where this beach area was. But that's all fact. So my mom was involved with this because she saw a UFO. And then my other grandfather, he was very open-minded. He was a smart guy. He was very methodical. He was an accountant. He used to do math in his head, and he was just one of those guys. But he was a firm believer that there were things out there that we didn't know about. He's an old Navy guy too. So I mean, he was. Yeah. He'd been around, and they were both from the Grace generation. They were both combat vets. They were both real cool guys.
You hear a lot of military guys talk about things that they've seen, things that they've experienced out there. But one thing that I don't think I've ever heard is like Navy personnel talking about anything they've experienced underwater.
I've never heard of anything about that, and I've got a friend of mine whose dad was an XO on a nuclear attack sub, and he's one of the smartest guys I ever met, and I never once ever heard him say anything. But he's probably still under that oath of secrecy. He probably couldn't say anything. I'd love to be able to get into his brain too and see what he knows, but I'd probably be the only guy that I would believe. Like anything he says, I would believe because he's just one of those kind of guys. But I honestly don't know. That's a good question. And Joshua P. Warren came out with the underwater USO tape from Puerto Rico, and I'm convinced that's 100% legitimate.
Yeah, I've seen a lot more of those too.
Yeah, so I mean, you never know, and who's going to see that? Any member of the branch any branch of the military is going to see that. It's probably the Navy or the Marines. Yeah, I mean, those are the ones that are out there the most. So if those guys tell you something, then I would believe it because they would know. They're the experts in that field.
Yeah, I think I've heard obviously a lot of UFO stuff from Air Force. And I've heard Bigfoot stuff from both Army and Marine.
Now, see, a lot of the Bigfoot podcasts, other podcasts I've heard, because you know what, I'm like anyone else. I listen to all kinds of different podcasts, and I just enjoy the stories. And it's one of these things where I take them with a grain of salt. Some of them I don't believe at all. Some of them I believe 150%. That's because just because some things they say, and that's a lot of things with Dogman reports. Anyone that's actually done a lot of research with Dogman and had a sighting with a Dogman, there's certain things about a Dogman that people who have actually seen them, they don't discuss. I don't know why, but it's like an unwritten rule. You just don't discuss it. And when someone brings up a particular aspect, then they're legitimate. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And when you talk to certain people about specific things like that, and you can pretty much tell if someone's lying to you or not. And when they do that, I think that gives a lot of credibility to what you already know. But the military, as far as that goes, running into Bigfoot, things like that. I heard a podcast not too long ago. I for the life of me, I can't remember who it was. I don't know if we should mention anyone else's podcast because we don't have permission. But it's a guy that's pretty well known. He had some retired Army. I can't remember if the guy was like a special forces guy or just anyway. He'd been in the Army a long time, and he sounded like he knew exactly what he was talking about. They have their own lingo. And he told, or he was talking about how. Bigfoot was basically known to the higher ups, and they were ordered not to attack him. They were ordered not to shoot him. If you saw him, just walk away, turn around, walk away. They're not going to hurt you. And then they're debriefed, and they're usually transferred if they have a sighting. To me, that makes sense. Because why would you want to go out like some of these? I mean, I don't know how big these military bases are, these camps, but I'm guessing they're probably a couple thousand acres. Yeah. Especially if they're in the woods and where they do the training.
Yeah.
How big is the camp down here?
Yeah.
I mean, Lejeune, is it Lejeune? Is that? I'm guessing that's a huge military base.
I would say probably bigger than what we know.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, because there's underground too, I'm assuming. Again, I don't know, that's the conspiracy guy in me. But I'm saying if there are these creatures and they know about them and they're told not to fire on them, they're told to leave them alone, there's probably a reason for it. And that reason's probably, if you get one, it's the three behind you you're not going to see.
Yeah.
And it's going to take more than, a couple bullets to stop these things. Which reminds me of another report, and that took place in Western Carolina, what was it, about 7 years ago? Mm-hmm. Where there was a small town. I think I've narrowed down what town it is, but I'm not going to say it. In Western Carolina, there was a couple people that disappeared while they were hiking, and cattle, some livestock was being abused and damaged, and basically fed upon, and just the body was left there. And they said they had what they call a black cow situation. My friends, I'm just going to give you a little lingo here. If you ever hear anyone refer to anything in the woods as a black cow, that is a slang term for Bigfoot. And, of course, a Dogman is a black dog or black wolf. Do I know this to be fact? No. This is just things I've heard from different people over the years, and the lingo has not changed. And honestly, it makes sense, because what are you going to call Bigfoot?
Right.
I mean, that makes sense. I mean, so. But anyway, they run upon a family troop of nasty black cows, and they sent in some special forces. Apparently, came out of one of the bases over here in North Carolina. And I guess, I don't know if there's 10 or 12 guys that went in. I know from what I was told, 2 people did not make it out. One of them had his arm and shoulder ripped completely out. And the other one was pretty much decapitated. I guess this Bigfoot came down like out of a tree on his knees, swung down, and pulled the guy's head off, and then disappeared.
Now, I don't necessarily believe that all Bigfoot or Sasquatch are necessarily malicious.
No, I don't either.
They're dangerous, but in a situation, well, obviously that situation, they were probably.
I think the alpha said the alpha is the one that's in charge, and I think the alpha was allowing this to happen. He was probably doing it himself.
Yeah.
So the rest of the troop ended up doing the same thing, and it cost them their lives, because they all got flown out in a body bag or a big body net, whatever you want to call it, from the bottom of a Sikorsky helicopter.
Right.
So, I mean, and what happens to them after that, I don't know. I'm a firm believer that the Smithsonian still has a lot to do with what happens to the bodies of the cryptids. It's just been going on. I think
Smithsonian, excuse me, is kind of a lot like the Vatican.
Exactly. Because even the reports of like the Lovelock Caves and all the bodies coming out of there, where'd they all go?
Yeah.
Smithsonian.
Yeah.
Any mounds that have ever been found in the middle part of America, and they're found and dug up, who shows up? Smithsonian.
Yeah.
So I think there's probably something to do with the government with them, but again, I don't know. It's again, that's why we call it a conspiracy theory, because we don't know. It's a conspiracy.
Another branch of them.
It's part of them, and they know who they are. And again, we're available.
So why do you think? You do hear reports of aggressive Sasquatch from time to time. What do you think makes them aggressive?
I think, honestly, there's contaminants in the water that they drink, and just like a human being, it messes with their brain.
Right.
There's I hate saying it. I'm a capitalist through and through. I love this country. It's the greatest country in the world. But unfortunately, there's a lot of business that doesn't do the right thing, and they'll find the cheapest way to get rid of toxic stuff. And a lot of times they dump it, and they think they're going out far enough to dump it and not get caught, and they probably are. But because they do that, animals drink the water, and those chemicals do mental damage. And I think a lot of the problems that these reports have is a lot of the activity is because of tainted water. I mean, if the average Bigfoot is 9-10 foot tall, maybe 1,200, 1,400 pounds, how much water do you think he's got to drink a day?
Yeah, a lot.
So if it's polluted water, and if it's just like, say it's heavy metal runoff, first thing it does is it causes, brain issues. So I think that's what happens. Maybe some of it could be hydrophobic, old school rabies. We don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know. But I think the violent reports are usually caused by something. Someone goes out shooting them. Someone does something. We don't know.
Yeah.
Like, it's another one of these things we just don't know.
Well, and there again, I heard a story on another podcast. A hunter, he was out hunting and came across one, and he just kind of froze. And he said that he was just frozen. He didn't know. He said he wasn't exactly afraid, but he just didn't know what to do. And he said he noticed that this Bigfoot, the first thing it did was look at his gun and then look back at him. And that shows recognition of what that is.
Oh, I'm a firm believer they know what a boomstick can do.
And he said that when he noticed that, he just laid his gun down.
I think I heard the same podcast, yeah.
And kind of backed away, and he kept kind of eye contact with.
Yeah, didn't he have his head tilted down, but he still was looking at it?
Yeah, he took a
non-aggressive stance.
Exactly, yeah. And that shows a large amount of intelligence.
Tiny, you and I both know it is not easy to survive in the wilderness. You and I have both done our share of camping. Lord knows we've done our share of hiking. Lord knows we've almost gotten lost I don't know how many times.
Yep.
Out in the woods. It happens. These creatures have the ability to know where they are, know what they're looking for, and to not be seen unless they want to be seen.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer you only see one if they want you to see it.
Yeah.
And I heard a story from someone. There's a pretty famous story of a Bigfoot house being attacked, And the truth is, you didn't get the whole story, because the reason why the house was getting attacked is because the people were out hunting, and they ran into one of these creatures, and they opened up on it.
Yeah.
And that's what started the whole problem. So a lot of times when you hear about these attacks and things like this, there's always something that precipitates these events. And I think they're vindictive. Yeah, I think they're vindictive. I think if they've got the mindset, you hurt one of ours, we're going to hurt one of yours. And I think that happened. It does make sense. I just heard a story not too long ago that takes place not too far from in Buncombe County in North Carolina. It took place right after the Revolutionary War. And this family was homesteading. They built a log cabin. The old man was out deer hunting, and he saw basically a Bigfoot. He took a pop shot at it. And when the family opened their front door, they found the decapitated body and the head laying next to it. And they saw this creature just walking off. And again, I think there's provocation. I think something happened. Yeah. And that's the one thing that really ticks me off about most reports. And you've known me. You've seen me do an investigation. Mm-hmm. If someone's telling me they've got a cryptid activity in their house, or there's some cryptid activity in their property, and it's amping up, my first question is what? Well, what did you do?
Yeah.
What did you? And they'll never. And I hate saying this, but most people won't even tell you the truth. Because they're either one, they know they did something and they don't want to share it.
Yeah.
Because they're afraid of legal retribution. Because like if he's taking pop shots at this thing, and it's say half human, well, does that qualify as you're shooting at another person? Or they don't want to tell you what happened because it's going to make them look stupid.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, I've heard people, again, there's this one individual not too far from here. You're familiar with this story. He was getting up every morning and his garbage cans had been knocked over. So he thought it was a bear or something. So he actually poisoned his trash.
Yeah.
And the next morning he gets up and he videotaped it, incidentally, allegedly. And he videotapes this. And the next morning he wakes up, he looks at his camera, and he's got what he calls a huge gorilla going through his garbage, picking up the poison stuff, putting it over on one side, sorting through the trash can, and getting stuff that was edible. So what does he do? Of course, he calls the local police. And who shows up but our friends, the MIBs, or them? So, things like that happen. So, I mean, if you want to get yourself in a hot seat, have something on video.
Yeah.
That's why, I'm a friend. There's other podcasters out there. And I want to say, I'm going on the record with this one. And this is how I view things. This is me, the Cryptid Guy. If something happens and you have evidence and you get that knock on the door, do yourself a favor, all right? As much as it pains me to say this, feel free to call me or email me because I'll be more than happy to help you if it's local. But cooperate. Give these people what they want because they will make your life a living hell. You can't win, all right? You can't do it. It's just you will not win. I hate sounding negative. I hate because I know a lot of cryptid zoologists are out there. Oh, he's crazy. If you go to the press, okay, go ahead, try. All right, you're dealing with forces you can't even imagine the capability they have. So that's just my stance on that. If you're called on it, give them everything, agree to whatever they do, and just go live your life because you'll have a life to live. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, I agree. I mean, there's, like you said, you're dealing with agencies.
You cannot win.
Yeah.
Here's an example. All right, here's a hypothetical for you. This may or may not have happened to the old Cryptid Guy here. My laptop computer may have automatically turned itself on at 2 a.m. one morning when I was downstairs getting a drink of water, and all my files just started popping up on the screen. And then what happens? They just start deleting automatically. Now, again, that may or may not have happened, but if that did happen, who could do that? I know it wasn't me if that happened. Tiny, if that happened, could you have done that?
I couldn't have.
Okay.
It'd take a skilled hacker.
Or someone that just isn't a hacker, just can push a few buttons to make something happen.
Yeah.
If that happened. So my point is this. Cooperate. All right? If you even have the slightest concern, all right, that you have evidence that might be an endangerment to your reputation or your fiscal well-being, all right, just be honest. All right? Do what you got to do, but be honest. Keep it to yourself. Say nothing. All right? But don't advertise. And I will say this. anyone that thinks they're going to make any money off of this is ridiculous. Now, there'll be people charging for seminars and things like that. I've gone to them. I've been asked to do a few of them. And everyone likes to make a couple bucks. I sell T-shirts for $5 more than when I've got into them because I make real good T-shirts. And I only use that to, buy gas because I do so much driving around. I think, on a ballpark every year when I get my taxes done, I probably spend $5,000 a year on my hobby in the crypto paranormal world. Just most of that's in gas. I've already got most of the equipment. Tiny, you probably run there too. All the driving you do.
Probably, yeah.
So that's just the fact of life. You're never going to get rich doing this. And here's the thing I say. When someone says, "Oh, well, we'll advertise the body when we get it out of the woods," if you got a 9 to 1,200 pound Bigfoot that has miraculously somehow been done in by you or your friends, at what point do you actually think you're going to get that out of the woods? All right. Now you're talking about half a ton of dead weight. Good luck with that.
Yeah, you'd need some heavy equipment.
Not only that, we haven't forgotten about his family pack around him.
Yeah.
And that goes for Dogman too. If you get one in, if you do one in, there's going to be a lot more coming around. If God forbid you ever have to do that, my advice to you is turn around and walk away. A very escalated pace. Because I've actually heard of people that have been followed up to 100 miles. And
when we were in the haunted woods, we were being followed by something.
Oh yeah, that definitely. And that's when all the other stuff started happening too. So
I know for a fact there was something pacing us in those woods, but I could not see it. And the thing is, like I said, I'm 6 foot, I'm 300 pounds. I made myself disappear in the woods in a blue shirt.
Yeah.
Okay. So anything that's colored the same as the forest is going to be able to disappear.
Well, that's why when people say, Auburn, it's Auburn, you'd see it. Oh yeah, what color is a Bengal tiger?
Yeah. Or
Siberian tiger? And that's like a perfect camouflage color, especially in the fall. Can you imagine being Auburn and hiding in the fall in the woods with the leaf color? You'd never see them. And the other thing is these creatures are so big, you're not thinking you're going to look up. You're thinking you're going to see something that's going to be at your head level or lower.
Yeah.
So you could walk right by one of these guys.
Looking at his torso.
And not even realize it because you're not even thinking.
Well, and you think about it too, like a big cat.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a big cat in the woods, you're not going to know.
Nope.
It. Not until it's right there.
Unless it wants you to know.
Yeah. And when it wants you to know, it's too late.
Yeah, unless it's giving you a freebie.
Yeah.
Because it might growl or hiss or something that you might get that, but other than that, you're in trouble.
The fact of the matter is, you can hide in the woods.
Oh yeah, you can hide a lot in the woods. I love that movie Harry and the Hendersons because of the end. The end is the best part.
Yeah.
Because you remember the end.
Yep.
There's Harry, and then there were 6 more.
Yeah.
And they're just hiding in plain sight.
Yep.
That was the best homage. They just boom, there they are. I mean, but you had no idea.
Yep.
Until remember, the little one was on the floor, looked like a rock or a bush or something like that. You have no idea. So, they're there. And they've got that camouflage. Nature designed them to be able to disappear in their environment. And that's why we keep going back to, you can't beat Mother Nature. Because that's just the way it is. You have to accept that.
Yeah, there's so many examples of camoufage.
Look at great white sharks.
Yeah.
You cannot see a great white shark in the water. When you're in the water, you can't see. I used to dive a lot, and I've seen sharks, and unless you're on top of them, you can't see them. They are literally right there, and they're designed specifically to do that so they can sneak up on prey. That's just the way it is. And why wouldn't that be a normal asset for all predatory animals? Look at wolves.
Yep.
Lions. You can't see lions in their natural habitat. When they're in that tall grass, forget about it. Leopards, anything.
Yeah.
Bears, you can't.
Any sort of predator.
Any sort of predator, you really can't see it because nature designed them to be able to do that. Well, anyway, this has been an awesome first podcast, Tiny. I am very excited about doing this again. You got anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think we're good for this one.
Awesome. My friends, if anyone wants to get in touch with us, you can email us at beyondfringe001@gmail.com. We haven't set up a webpage or anything. Probably what we're going to do is just post things off the Asheville Cryptid and Paranormal Society.com. Until Tiny wants to do something else, that's what we'll just keep doing. So you can get us at Asheville Cryptid and Paranormal society.com. And if you want to email us again, our email address is beyondfringe001@gmail.com, and it's all lowercase.
Yeah, and that's questions, comments, stories, anything.
Any stories, if you want to show us some evidence, anything you want, feel free. And we will be posting a phone number soon. We've got a couple things lined up. It's just like I said, this is just our first podcast out of the gate for almost, we've been off for almost a year.
Almost.
Wow, maybe a little longer.
Yeah.
Feels good to be back.
It does.
I hope everyone enjoyed the podcast. Again, feel free to reach out and just say hi. If you like it, let us know. If you want to hear something else, just let us know. Again, our email address is beyondfringe001@gmail.com. Until then, I'm the Cryptid Guy. This is Daniel Tiny Hurst.
Thanks for listening, y'all.
Keep believing. Have a great night.